In the news tonight, Jordan condemns twin bomb attack in Ankara that killed 128 people, and Turkey announces 3 days of mourning as security forces open an investigation into the attacks. Vladimir Putin welcomes the opportunity to discuss security in the Mideast region during meetings with the Saudi defense minister and the UAE crown prince on the sideline of the Formula One race in Sochi. And a Palestinian woman motorist sets off a bomb after being pulled over by Israeli police near a Jewish settlement in the occupied West Bank, wounding herself and an officer. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. His Majesty King Abdullah met here in Amman with French Prime Minister Manuel Valls in the presence of Crown Prince Hussein. His Majesty and Valls discussed the need for the international community to support Jordan as it struggles to meet the needs of a growing number of Syrian refugees. The meeting also dealt with French economic support to Jordan in the forms of soft loans, partly aimed at developing the infrastructure in development zones to attract foreign investment. His Majesty and Valls also reviewed ongoing developments in the region, namely the urgency of arriving at a political solution to the Syria crisis to end the cycle of violence and bloodshed and preserve the country's unity. His Majesty later left Amman on a private visit abroad. His Royal Highness Prince Faisal bin Al Hussein was sworn in as regent in the presence of cabinet members. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour also met the visiting French Premier and discussed with him ways of establishing closer ties between Jordan and France in various fields. Mansour highlighted the significance of the high-level French delegation's visit in creating further opportunities to enhance bilateral ties. The two sides have signed 3 agreements worth $230 million to undertake projects in the water sector. Separately, the Prime Minister met with India's President Pranab Mukherjee on the second day of his visit to the kingdom. Mansour presented the advantages that Jordan enjoys as a trade gateway to the region, especially after reinstating peace and security in Iraq and Syria and the return of normalcy in the two countries. Mansour thanked the President for India's humanitarian response to Jordan in aid for Syrian refugees after recent donation of $500,000 US. The meeting reviewed the Palestinian issue, which Mansour said remains to be in the heart of all conflicts in the region, reiterating the need for a just and durable solution to the Palestinian people. President Mukherjee invited Jordanian businesses to invest in India and to set up joint ventures in the field of renewable energy, pharmaceuticals and the ICT sector. He said India is open to infrastructure projects to the value of $1 trillion in the coming years. On the sideline of the meeting, the two sides signed 6 agreements and MOUs covering various sectors.
Jordan and India have very warm, cordial, historical and cooperative relations that go back, as you mentioned yesterday, in your audience with His Majesty the King, to 65 years since the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries. We would like to utilize this visit to deepen and strengthen our existing mutually beneficial relations.
Mr. Prime Minister, I am really happy to have the opportunity of visiting your beautiful country. This is the first state visit by an Indian president to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. And since the establishment of our diplomatic relations, we have fulfilled our commitment to establish treaty for friendship and cooperation.
Also today, the Indian president and Amman mayor unveiled a plaque at a street in Abdoon that has been named after the former Indian leader Mahatma Gandhi.
Dr. Mahatma Gandhi, of the freedom struggle of people.
President Mukherjee also visited the Peace Garden at Al Hussein Public Parks, where he unveiled a commemorative plaque of an olive tree he planted for global peace. The Indian guest also visited the site of an olive tree that was planted last year in honor of former South Africa's Nelson Mandela on the anniversary of Jordan's Independence Day. The government has condemned 2 terrorist attacks in the Turkish capital Ankara that killed 128 people yesterday and left many others wounded. In a statement, Minister of State for Media Affairs Mohammed al-Momeni reiterated Jordan's support to the Turkish government and people as they confront widespread terror. His Majesty yesterday cabled Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan and expressed his deep sympathies over the loss of innocent lives. The 2 blasts happened seconds apart yesterday morning as crowds including pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party activists, leftist, labor unions and other civic groups gathered for a march to protest over the death of hundreds since the conflict resumed between security forces and the Kurdistan Workers' Party in the mainly Kurdish southeast. Security officials are investigating to find the perpetrators, but they say initial signs suggest Daesh was behind the blast. On the street of Ankara, meanwhile, people are mourning the dead. 3 days of national mourning was declared by Prime Minister Ahmed Davutoglu. Here's more.
Thousands of people gather in Ankara on Sunday to remember the 95 people killed and hundreds wounded in the most deadly attack of its kind on Turkish soil that happened a day earlier. People laid red carnations in front of the train station where the attack took place. Newspaper headlines express pain and anger as the country begins 3 days of national mourning. "We don't deserve this," one person said. "We should stand in solidarity and rise above these difficult days hand in hand." The blast happened before a peace march by pro-Kurdish activists and others who were protesting the deadly conflict between Turkish government forces and the Kurdistan Workers' Party in the country's southeast. As investigators worked to identify those responsible for the bombing, a security analyst said it was likely a militant group.
A lot of people speculated that it might have been PKK and maybe other groups, but it is more likely that it is ISIS or ISIS-related violent jihadist groups. It's not unexpected. Fortunately, it's not an unexpected event.
The ruling PKK party, as widely expected, has ordered its fighters to halt operations in Turkey unless they faced attack. It said it would avoid acts that could hinder a, quote, fair parliamentary election just 3 weeks away.
Meanwhile, the Turkish government is showing no sign of stopping its war against the Kurdistan Workers' Party, even after the group ordered its fighters to halt attacks on Turkish soil immediately following the twin bomb attacks of yesterday. A military convoy was dispatched to the country's southeast province of Sirnak as Turkish warplanes continued to strike PKK's target in northern Iraq and southeastern Turkey since yesterday. Security sources said some 30 to 35 PKK guerrillas were killed in northern Iraqi raids today. Russian President Vladimir Putin met with Saudi Arabia's defense minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Salman on the sidelines of a Formula One race in Russia's Sochi resort. The foreign ministers of the 2 countries, Sergei Lavrov and Adel Jubeir, speaking after the meeting, said Russia and Saudi Arabia will increase cooperation in Syria and the fight against terrorism. Lavrov said Moscow understands Saudi's concern about Russia's policy in Syria, but that the 2 countries shared the aim of preventing the establishment of a terrorist caliphate in the country. Putin earlier met with Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, also in Sochi. He said he welcomed the opportunity to discuss security in the Mideast region, particularly after the 2 terror attacks in Turkey. Earlier, the Russian Defense Ministry said Russia's Air Force flew 64 stories over Syria in the last 24 hours, destroying Daesh positions, training camps and ammunition dumps. These sorties were performed against 63 targets in Hama, Latakia, Idlib and Raqqa provinces, and all planes returned safely to base. Spokesman for the Russian Defense Ministry, Major General Igor Konashenkov, said at a news briefing. Russia's military officials also held a second video conference with counterparts from the United States to discuss safe flight operations over Syria, the ministry said. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights and Syria's state television said the Syrian military took control of Tel Skik, a highland area in Idlib province, after what was described as Russia's extensive operation. The Russian bombing has been accompanied by a major advance led by Syrian government forces backed by Hezbollah fighters and Iranian troops. Over to Iraq, where several members of Daesh were killed in an airstrike while meeting in a town in west of the country. But the group's reclusive leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who according to earlier reports was hurt in the strike, was not in the meeting. Iraq said its air force hit the meeting also struck a convoy that was carrying Baghdadi. A Twitter site that publishes statements from Daesh said reports that airstrikes had targeted Baghdadi were false. Hospital sources and residents said airstrikes hit 2 houses and killed 8 senior leaders of a Daesh police force in the town. A Palestinian woman motorist set off a bomb after being pulled over by Israeli police near a Jewish settlement in the occupied West Bank, wounding herself and an officer. Also, Palestinian youth clashed with Israeli forces in cities across the West Bank. Violence erupted near the West Bank town of Ramallah, where Israeli forces fired tear gas grenades towards Palestinian protesters, throwing stones at the soldiers. At the same time, Israeli soldiers used dispersal means to scatter Palestinian youth who were throwing stones at the entrance of Nablus city. In Beit Omar, hundreds held funeral for a Palestinian man who was shot during clashes with Israeli forces last Thursday and died of his wounds Saturday night. After the funeral, more violence sparked as Palestinian protesters faced Israeli soldiers. Tires were set alight and some of the protesters threw homemade Molotov cocktails towards the soldiers, who sprayed them with skunk water and fired tear gas grenades. And in the Gaza Strip, an Israeli airstrike on a Hamas target brought down a house, killing a pregnant Palestinian woman and her 3-year-old daughter. The explosion created a massive hole. Witnesses said the blast was so powerful it caused a nearby house to collapse while people were asleep inside. The Israeli military said its air force had targeted 2 weapons sites belonging to Hamas. The airstrike was in response to the launching of 2 rockets into Israel on Friday and Saturday last week, Israeli military officials said. No group has claimed responsibility for launching the rockets, one of which was intercepted. The other one hit an open area and no one was killed. Thousands of Lebanese rallied near the presidential palace in a show of support for Christian politician Michel Aoun, demanding to fill the vacant presidency. Waving the orange flag of Aoun's Free Patriotic Movement, demonstrators packed streets in Baabda district that houses the headquarters of the presidency, now vacant for over a year due to political conflict. The rally was called to mark events in October 1990, when the Syrian army captured Baabda and many Lebanese soldiers loyal to Aoun were killed. Aoun, an ally of Hezbollah, has made clear that he would like the presidency but does not have the backing of the rival alliance led by Sunni politician Saad al-Hariri. The alliance includes prominent Christian rival to Aoun, notably his civil war enemy Samir Gaga, who also seeks the presidency. Dozens of brightly colored hot air balloons took to the sky in the 9th and final day of the 2015 Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta in New Mexico. Several hundred balloons were registered to take part in the 9-day event. As many as 550 can take off from the Balloon Fiesta Park within a 2-hour period on days of mass ascensions, as launch of all participating balloons that takes place in 2 waves. The annual event began in 1992 with just 13 balloons taking off from a parking lot in Albuquerque and has grown to include balloons piloted from more than 22 countries with more than 100,000 spectators visiting each year. Spain's Dani Pedrosa claimed the 50th Grand Prix win with his career, taking victory to the Japanese MotoGP in Motegi, as runner-up Valentino Rossi of Italy extended his lead in the championship standings. The Yamaha of Jorge Lorenzo of Spain and Rossi were fasted off the line, leaving the Honda of world champion Marc Marquez of Spain and Pedrosa behind. Rossi finished second, while his Yamaha teammate and championship rival Lorenzo faded to third. Rossi now leads Lorenzo by 18 points in the standing, with a maximum of 75 available from the remaining 3 rounds in Australia, Malaysia and Valencia. Switzerland's French Open champion Stan Wawrinka captured his 4th title this year when he beat his good friend Benoit Paire 6-2, 6-4 in the final of Japan Open. Wawrinka needed just 65 minutes to win the one-sided final at Ariake Coliseum, the venue that will stage a tennis competition at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Wawrinka wrapped up the opening set after just 26 minutes with 3 service breaks. The Frenchman, who played today's final with his left ankle heavily strapped, upsetted Japan's Kei Nishikori in the semifinals, but was no match for Wawrinka. And finally, moderate weather continues in most regions tonight with northeasterly light to moderate winds. Tomorrow, moderate weather prevails in hilly areas, but it will be relatively hot in the Badia and the Jordan Valley with southeasterly moderate to brisk winds. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect hot conditions tomorrow with northerly moderate winds and calm seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to end the news, here's a recap of our top stories. Jordan condemns twin bomb attacks in Ankara that killed 128 people, and Turkey announces 3 days of mourning as security forces open an investigation into the attacks. Vladimir Putin welcomes the opportunity to discuss security in the Mideast region during meetings with the Saudi defense minister and the UAE crown prince on the sidelines of the Formula 1 race in Sochi. And a Palestinian woman motorist sets off a bomb after being pulled over by Israeli police near a Jewish settlement in the occupied West Bank, wounding herself and an officer. And with this we come to an end. I'm Farah Ajlouni. Thank you for watching and have a good night.